Hi, Donna. I don't hear you. Okay. Just before this, I could hear you, and now I don't. Shoot. Oh, the joys of live. You were doing. No! You were doing something with your headphones there during the countdown, and I think you messed it up. Oh, can you try taking. I'm gonna take you out and bring you in. Maybe that helps. Say something now. No. Oh, what a nice way to start. Can you go to your settings and check your audio? I'm gonna also do this. Make sure it's not on my end. And you're not muted. You'll have to do something. You'll have to either change your thing and come back, or and meanwhile, while Donna's getting her stuff together, yeah, let's everybody just stretch it out. Yeah, let's move it. Let's move it. Help. Hopefully Donna can get back in. Yeah. Do you have another pair of headphones? All right, everybody. Okay, so while Donna's getting straightened out, welcome to the first live episode of the So Freaking Healthy podcast. We are today talking about leaky gut, and we are going to talk about what it is, and we're going to talk about how you might know you have it, and we're also going to talk about what you can do about it. As a general disclaimer, Donna and I are not medical professionals. We are certified health coaches. Donna is certified in functional medicine as a health coach. But everything we talk about today is purely for entertainment and information. Obviously, you should always consult your doctor on everything that you do in terms of changing your diet or if you have issues. So yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about today. So we hope that you are, interested in leaky gut. Maybe you've never even heard of leaky gut. So if you have never heard of it, or if you're more or less like, what are we talking about today? You can already start to leave some questions in the chat, and I will make sure that we get to those questions if we can during the course of the live. I hear you now, but I don't.
Can you hear?
I hear you, but I don't see you. We're halfway there. All right. Okay, say something else. No, still don't hear you. No, something. No, I don't hear you. No. Okay. Donna's still working on her tech. I have no idea how to help you here because I can't see what's going on your side. No. No, I still can't hear you. And I'm gonna just try. No, you're not muted on my side, so I don't know exactly.
How about now?
Now, yes, now I can hear you. Oh, welcome to the show, Donna.
Thanks for, taking everything on. Let me see if I can actually hear you in my ears as well. That would be really, really exciting. Can you hear me still?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
I'm asking for too much.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Megan. How's it going?
Good. So I already did all the intro. I already did everything. So
I can leave. I'm good.
No, but I'm glad that you got settled before I had to start talking about stuff, because I think you're in general way more versed in this topic, so I would have had to cut it short, I think, if you couldn't
I
get it
know,
figured out.
right? Well, I'm here now. I'm sorry. Me and technology,
I know they don't mix at all.
I cannot explain it, but it is what it is. And here we are. Cool. So I'm super excited. I know I say this about every single topic that we talk about,
Yeah.
but leaky gut is super exciting for me to talk about. It really,
Hmm.
really is. And I think that a lot of people would be very interested in hearing about it and understanding what the hype is about because the words leaky gut or the terminology leaky gut has popped up
Hmm.
lately. And I think, depending on what school you come from, some would say it's just a made up thing. Others would say, like, oh no, it's very, very real and very, very serious. And
Hmm.
so I'm excited for us to just share our knowledge about it and our experience with it and
Hmm.
hopefully
Yeah.
help some people out there. That's
Yep. So, yeah. So as I mentioned before, go ahead and type any questions, drop those in the comments. And if you're live with us, we'll, fine, we'll answer them. If you were watching this later and you drop some questions in the comments, we'll try to get back to you or answer you in the comments later on. So let's get into it. So we're going to start off with, you know, what is this thing? What is this leaky gut? Because it sounds leaky gut. I, I mean, it's very on point, but it also sounds like things are leaking through, which is kind of what it is. So maybe Donna, maybe you could start with like the definition or yeah. Tell me,
yeah. I'll
teach me,
start.
wise one.
I feel like what Yoda. I've never seen that movie, by the way. So look, so leaky gut. I like to put it in a like a terminology that people would actually understand. And so when you think about our digestive system as a whole, right? Some would call it our gut, right? Our immune system, our sorry, digestive system, meaning from the mouth down to our buttholes. Everything is actually one layer of cells, right? So you can imagine it as like a very thin cheesecloth or a kitchen cloth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the job of the gut or the job of the digestive system is actually to press down and and break down the food into smaller and smaller pieces until they're small enough to go through the little holes in the cheesecloth, right? Or in that cloth and go into our body. If it's nutrients, if it's, the actual food particles and go into our bloodstream and our body in general. And so if you can imagine it, it's basically, and those who are watching the video can see me do this explanation, the cells are actually really tightly packed together, right? That's the way our cells are supposed to be. And when we have leaky gut, we actually have little cracks. I don't know if you can see it, little cracks between those cells. And those cracks mean that now food particles and other things, right, medication, drug, whatever we're taking, is now going into our bloodstream in bigger pieces and in things that shouldn't actually be where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And the body is actually then detecting that something is wrong. Something is in the bloodstream where it shouldn't be. And now we're led to having an inflammation. We're suffering from food sensitivities, etc. So basically, you can imagine it as, yeah, the cells having gaps between them and having
Mm-hmm.
things kind of go through into the bloodstream that where it
Yeah.
shouldn't be.
I would add on to that, another way I've heard it described is that so the food needs to be broken down into a small enough molecule that it actually permeates through the cell and then goes out the other side of the cell, right? So that's the size that we're looking for. So when you have anything that goes into your body, it has to be broken down that small to get into the bloodstream, right? And when the cells start to come apart, and now you have space between the cells, so you could have a molecule of carrot, right? A bit of carrot that has not broken down into its lowest components, right?
Right.
So the carrot in itself is inherently not an issue for your body, assuming you're not allergic to carrots. So, right. But the problem is that on the other side of your intestines, you have little soldiers over there, your white blood cells going and things that are trying to recognize stuff that's coming through. This is your immune response, right? And when it sees that bit of carrot, it doesn't recognize it because it's too big. It's got too many components and it doesn't recognize it as a pattern match to what it should be allowing through. And then you have an inflammation response to that bit of carrot or whatever. A lot of times you see the word toxin going through. That carrot to the body is toxic because it is not broken down into the usable parts that it needs to be for the body. And that's kind of then where the inflammation starts from
Right.
eating normal food that would be
Right.
quote unquote healthy for you.
Exactly. And
Right.
something really important to mention here is that an inflammation is not necessarily a bad thing. An inflammation is the body's reaction to
Mm-hmm.
something that it needs to attack, and I don't know if it's a virus, if it's a bacteria,
Mm-hmm.
if it's whatever, the body needs to respond to it. When it's problematic, it is when it's chronic, meaning
Right.
when we constantly have inflammation because we're constantly eating that carrot, thinking that we're doing ourselves a favor, but our body is now seeing it as the enemy because of the leaky gut, because that huge particle, as Megan mentioned it, is now too big to actually be
Mm-hmm.
roaming around where it is, which is the bloodstream, and now the body is just going into attack, right?
Mm-hmm.
As you said, Megan, like we have those little soldiers that are going to protect us whenever they can, whatever they can.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's exactly it. That's basically, it's a huge component in food sensitivities and intolerances. It's a huge component in brain fog and bloating and thyroid issues and joint issues and skin rashes. And so the
Mm-hmm.
the this not side effects, but like the symptoms that we
Symptoms.
get, yeah, the
Mm-hmm.
symptoms could be anything across the scale, and it really does depend on how your
Oh,
body reacts to it.
let's hold on to symptoms till we get to the next how do you know you have it? Because there's
Yeah.
a few more things that we should talk about in terms of what is it, because as we mentioned, it's something that the medical community, and I'm talking Western conventional medicine, has not really taken a hold of as a medical condition, right?
Yeah.
So, and this is interesting when I was doing my research for this. So back in the day, those Greeks, coming up with all this, or maybe it was Latin, I don't know. But anyway, back in the day, there was a term for conditions that came about from the gut, and it was hydrochondronism, like, so you're a hypochondriac, so
Yeah.
that term came because the top of the gut is called the hydrochon, and anything that they thought was diseases that were deriving from the gut or illnesses, they would lump it into this. But because it was so hard to diagnose something that was happening in the gut, soon that word
Hypochondria.
hypochondriac. Why was I saying hydrochondriac? Ah,
I
hyper.
was like, hydro, that's water. I don't
Yeah,
understand the connection, but sure, I'll go with
I
it.
know. Hyperchondriac. Okay, let me look at my notes, Megan. So a hypochondriac is now somebody who is said to have fear that they have an unknown disease, but in reality, those people back in the age were right. There is so much, and that's what we're learning now, where so much is happening in the gut. So to reiterate, leaky gut, when you hear it and you go to your doctor and you say, I think I have leaky gut, they're going to look at you and go, there's no such thing as leaky gut if you go to a conventional doctor, right? So it's a
I have
really
something to
important.
add.
Oh, okay,
I
go,
have
go,
something to add. I have
go.
something to add because you can say the same thing about IBS. So a lot of people go and they go to the doctor and they say, look, I have a lot of stomach cramps, I have a lot of gas, I have a lot of diarrhea and or constipation, often alternating. So often people will suffer from both in different on different times. I have this and I have that. And they'll get tested, meaning they'll have a camera stuck up their throat or up their butt, and they'll check things and they'll go like, look, we understand, we see that your intestines are busy bees and they're kind of working extra hard and things like that, but we can't find the actual problem. So you have IBS. IBS is irritable bowel syndrome, right? Now, IBS is exactly that. It's, we gave you a word that will hopefully help you to shut up, but we don't have a solution for it. Unlike
Yeah.
IBD, for example, which is something that they see and they know, okay, great, here's some medication, here's some probably antibiotics and whatever, and medication that will help you. So, and just to add to it for the parents out there, if you had a crying baby and they would not stop crying and the doctors would say, oh, they have colic, same shit, different word, is basically colic equals, yeah, they won't stop crying. No, we have no idea what's going on. Right. So that's, this is very typical. And again, there's, both Megan and I think everyone needs to understand this. And I sometimes come off as like dismissing conventional medicine. I do not dismiss it whatsoever. But I think we need to understand that there's a lot that conventional medicine doesn't necessarily know, because there's the lack of understanding of nutrition.
Or clinical studies. They haven't studied it yet as well.
They haven't studied it. And a lot of the studies are actually usually, it really matters who pays for these studies, right? There was a study about sugar in the 80s, and the sugar lobby came and paid off Harvard scientists. So, and that's when the fat, fat being evil came into play, because basically people were paid off to tell you that. So we need to understand, we need to put things in context. Of course, there's a lot of place for conventional medicine, but I think there are also a lot of, leaky guts out there, and a lot of gaps in the information that we do need to understand, that is missing. So yes, it is. It's really, I think it's really, it's a very interesting topic. And I think our gut in general is a very interesting organ that is not understood very well.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah. That is the understatement of the medical world for the last decade or more. I think that we've covered most of really kind of what is lucky gut. No.
Lucky gut would be amazing.
So the points that, to summarize what it is, your gut is supposed to be permeable to let nutrients through. However, it can be permeable, and that's where the problem happens, when you have increased permeability in your intestines, and things get through that are not necessarily bad for you if they go the right way, but are bad for you if they get into your body the wrong way. So let's move on to, how do you know if you have it? And
that's a tricky question. That's a very tricky question. I find that it's a tricky question because, as I kind of mentioned before, each body will signal, the alarm signs differently, right? So, for example, and of course, we have to consider that there are probably things that are now connected with that leaky gut. It could be IBS, as I mentioned before, right? So it could be that you're now all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but like you realize that nowadays more and more you're suffering from gas and bloating and diarrhea and constipation and whatever it may be. Okay, so there's that to consider. And of course, that's an easier correlation in our brain, because that's gut, right? Like something is wrong with our gut, and the gut is actually the one screaming for help.
Right.
But it could also be that your body is inflamed, right? If you take me, for example, I've always had kind of neck and shoulder issues, and my body, the inflammation will immediately show in my neck first and foremost. Now, who can think about neck? Oh, I probably ate something. You know what I mean? Like, you don't actually connect the two, because what does the neck have to do with our gut? But that's how my body is actually reacting to things. And that's how my body is actually showing that it is inflamed. Okay. So Yes, there's definitely ways, and I'm sure you have a beautiful list to share with us, Megan.
Yeah, I
Um,
do. Well, it's
but
not
you know,
necessarily a
yeah,
list. Yeah, go ahead. Finish.
no, go ahead.
So it's not necessarily a list of symptoms, as we mentioned, because leaky gut first of all, it can be like a cycle, right? Something
Yes.
else has caused leaky gut, and therefore you have leaky gut, and it causes something else. So it's really one of those very hard things to pinpoint the starting point. But what I have here from the Cleveland Clinic are some of the possible disease associations that we have. So, for example, um, metabolic disorders. A lot of metabolic disorders can be either caused by leaky gut or exacerbated by leaky gut,
Mm,
but doesn't mean it's all of them are caused. And that's the tricky part, right? So,
yeah.
for example, arthritis. Specifically, a lot of times rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune disease, and autoimmune diseases are triggered by inflammation in the body in terms of how much they affect the person who has it. So a lot of people find release from arthritis and rheumatoid arthritis from changing their diet and their gut microbiome to relieve and reduce that amount of inflammation. Same thing, chronic fatigue syndrome, asthma, fibromyalgia. um, a lot of these diseases can be, if not remedied or cured, because but supported by a better gut function. And conversely, if you had leaky gut, it might be more painful or more symptoms of those things. And that's really where it comes down to. It's really hard to know if you have leaky gut, is the
Yeah.
bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, I think with conventional medicine, it is definitely harder because, as you said, you might get dismissed by just bringing it up, depending on how open your doctor is to these topics.
Hmm.
With functional medicine, we do have certain tests that will point to that direction, right? And you can definitely run these tests. Talk to your functional medicine doctor. Run some tests, like the oat test, for example, is just one of many stool tests that you can do that you can actually, so O test is actually urine test. You can do some stool tests as well, which will then, of course, you can find out if you have, severe dysbiosis, if you have severe absorption problem, meaning like you're taking your
Hmm.
vitamin D every single day or even 2 pills of that, or double the drops or whatever, and you're
Hmm.
still very low on D, that's a huge sign that there's an absorption problem. And the
Hmm.
absorption problem usually comes from leaky gut because it's directed to the wrong place, right? Because it's leaking. So,
Hmm.
but you can also often tell by, if you have, severe brain fog, for example. There's a
Hmm.
direct connection we're talking about nowadays in functional medicine about a direct connection between leaky gut and leaky brain, right? The brain is
Hmm.
now inflamed. And so we're
Hmm.
we're struggling with depression, we're struggling with anxiety, we're struggling with brain fog, we're struggling with all of these things that a lot of people are talking about nowadays, and that is usually connected. Um,
Hmm.
and I think just wanting to take a step back, I think people do need to understand that there are things that will contribute to leaky gut, meaning it most often it doesn't just happen out of the blue, right? You're either consuming things that are contributing to the problem. Um,
Hmm.
there's, of course, genetics, that come to play, where you
Stress.
might have a great diet, but, your mom gave you the most terrible gut health by default. And you're kind of, you kind of stuck with it now. Taking a lot of antibiotics and a lot of medications and acid blockers and steroids and all of these things, those are huge contributors. Of course, sugar and processed foods and refined oils and pesticides and alcohol and stress is a huge one, which we've talked about so many times. Food poisoning can even lead to that, right? Because it's actually hurting our
Hmm.
gut permeability. So there are so many things that could be triggers. And that's where I think the difference between functional medicine and conventional medicine is, with functional medicine, we actually, or for sure a doctor and definitely other experts, we look at your history, your health history. So we're talking about from before you were born, right? We're talking about how your mom's pregnancy was and how you were born, if it was vaginal or C-section, and how you were fed, right? Without any like, no one's judging, but we know science is showing us that there's a huge difference in gut health with babies who were vaginal birth versus C-section, babies who were breastfed versus exclusively bottle fed or formula fed. But of course, you need to feed your baby whichever way, you need to pop it out whichever way. And so, of course, no one's actually judging you for that. But you can actually notice that, like a lot of kids, babies and kids who are very picky eaters, for example, we know that they have probably some sort of dysbiosis, some extremity of dysbiosis, because their bad gut bacteria is more pronounced, and it's asking for the white diet, as I call it, the pasta with no sauce, the rice with no sauce, the potatoes with no sauce. But yeah, I think there's a lot to understand about. You cannot self-diagnose leaky gut. You don't really know.
Yeah. And with the kind of insurgence over the last 15, 20 years of functional medicine, integrative medicine, showing that when they go to kind of the root of the cause and treat the body with food as medicine, both to remove food and to give food, so both ways, right? Now conventional medicine is going, okay, there is stuff here. We have to start looking at this, right? So again, according to the Cleveland Clinic, which is the website I have up at the moment, they are working on some tests, but at the moment there's no standard test because it's not a medical diagnosis. I'm using air quotes in the video. But there are a few tests here I want to talk about that I thought were really interesting, that I'm hoping will become standard, where you could go to your doctor and say, can you please test how my permeability of my intestines are? So the first one was a urine test. This one is interesting because you drink a solution of different kinds of sugars, with different molecules, what we were talking about before, right? Some of those molecules are digested and go through the right way, but some of those are not digested. And if they see them come through in your urine, which means they have passed through your intestinal tract in order to get to your kidneys, in order to go out in your urine, then they have actually by proxy measured the fact that your intestines are more permeable than they should be. So that's one test. I thought that's interesting. Yeah, it seems pretty straightforward and something that you could probably do very quickly at a doctor's office in the future. The next one is a blood test. So this one says it analyzes a sample of your blood for evidence of gut bacteria infiltration. So specific antibodies and endotoxins that they're looking for in your blood. And again, if it's in your blood, it's gone through, whether it's the right way or the wrong way, right? So I imagine what they're testing for is things that are too big to go through the cell wall, but have gone the wrong way. Some more invasive stuff like a tissue biopsy, and then of course an endoscopy exam where they go through and actually look at the lining in high resolution and magnification, and then they do a contrast fluid injection. So it sounds like, they've got this range of pee in a bottle all the way to, again, drink some dye and let's see how, where this dye goes in your body. So, and everything in between. So I'm hoping in the next couple of years that there will be more ability for doctors to give you a diagnosis, because what that means is that when you have a diagnosis like this, then insurance will pay for shit and you can actually get the help you need, right? Because as we've been talking about this whole time, if it's elusive, if nobody can put a tack into it and say that's what it is, then it makes it that much harder to treat. And as the person who has it, much harder for them to understand what the hell they have to do in order to fix it.
Yeah. A lot of people are walking around going from doctor to doctor and being told it's all in their head.
Yeah.
and given antidepressants, and I was there. I was literally there. I was at a place where I was being told that my problems were not real. They were all in my head, and
Mhm.
they were not. And so it's really important to understand, yes, if you have the financial ability to not wait for conventional medicine to catch up and to go to a functional medicine doctor and to run some tests, they will have the ability to tell you, look, you do have leaky gut, you do have, there is dysbiosis, there is A, B, C, D. It could be a list of things, and most often
Mhm.
the longer it's being uh, um, un, undealt with, is that a word? Am I making things up? I don't know.
No.
The longer it takes, the more chance that there will be more problems piled on, right? If
Mhm.
it's an autoimmune disease, if it's a thyroid problem, if it's a hormone problem, if it, again, each body will react differently. Some people go into full blown celiac. Others will really have gluten sensitivity. There's a
Mhm.
lot of foods that do contribute to that as well, that we now know, and other foods that are very random for some people, but because I was actually sensitive to certain things that I was just eating a lot of. And so it makes
Mhm.
sense because I was eating a lot of green beans, right? And everyone tells you, oh my God, green beans are the most healthy thing ever. And I was obsessed with them. And I was sensitive to green beans basically just because I was having so many of them, and it went through the leaky gut, and then my body was like, no, 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 this is the enemy, right? So there are many things that you can do
Mhm.
that can actually help. And if money is an issue, I would say definitely, yeah, of course you can wait it out and see if conventional medicine catches on quickly, and
Yeah.
is able to help us sooner than later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that though there are things to do. So okay, so we're now moving into the third part of the segment, which is
Yeah.
what can you do about it, right?
Yeah.
And we already mentioned that it can be a cycle, right? Where like, for
Yes.
example, you had a issue, maybe it was a temporary thing, caused some of this impermeability, increased impermeability into your gut, and now you have something else, right? So what some of the recommendations are, and Donna already mentioned this, is to treat the underlying condition that initially caused it. So that's one way you can approach it, especially if it's still going on, right? If you're still eating stuff that's inflaming your gut and things like that, or whatever it is, that can help. Although, and that's really what functional medicine is looking for. They're looking for really what caused it, as opposed to conventional medicine trying to treat the symptoms. Functional medicine really tries to treat the root cause. But there are some things I think you could do, even if you don't see a doctor, even if you're like, I don't know what it is. I just know that I don't feel good. I mean, there are some standard stuff like probiotics and prebiotics. If you're not taking some kind of probiotic and prebiotic, then you're doing yourself a disservice. There are tons of them out there. You can do your research. There's, I mean, all these different ways that you can get it. And I don't know, maybe down later we can put in a few of our favorite probiotic and prebiotics. But the point is that to get your gut function, start getting your flora in your gut healthier, right? So
Yeah.
that's it costs some money for prebiotics and probiotics if you take a supplement, but there are so many that are just normal foods that you can incorporate into your diet, like Jerusalem artichokes and all the cruciferous vegetables like
Right.
cauliflower and broccoli and anything that's green and grows from the
Onions and
ground,
garlic. Yeah. Yeah.
all of that stuff.
Those are
So,
prebiotics for sure. But I have to put a warning sign right where where you touched now, which is probiotics. Um, there are people who probiotics will actually make more harm than good at a certain point. Okay. And that's people, for example, who have SIBO or SIFO or really bad dysbiosis or histamine sensitivity, histamine problems. Those are the people. So when you work again, so I keep bringing it back to functional medicine, but when we work with functional medicine, we work on the 5R program, which is remove, replace, reinoculate, repair, and rebalance. Okay. And sometimes when you have certain issues that go along with the leaky gut, which then turned into a bigger monster. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you might actually suffer more when you're having probiotics than when you'll have to fix the issue before you actually go into probiotics, is what I'm trying to say, right? If you're taking probiotics, for example, you started taking probiotics and you've taken them for like 2 or 3 weeks, and you're still, from the beginning, you started feeling more bloated and more gassy and maybe diarrhea or whatever, which is normal when you start off with, but it didn't get better after over a week or two of taking them. That's a sign that there's another problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a sign that you need to stop the probiotics and you need to figure out what the issue is, and you need to heal the problem before you actually go back to taking probiotics. Probiotics are amazing for you, and prebiotics, for those who don't know, is basically the food for the probiotics, right? So you're giving the gut bacteria that you're kind of like putting in your body, you're giving it the food that it needs to flourish. But sometimes, because of other issues, you need to wait it out. You need to heal. For example, if it's SIBO or
Mm-hmm.
histamine intolerance, you need to heal the gut first and then re-inoculate the good guys,
Mm-hmm.
so that the gut health is actually getting better, if that makes sense.
But with those, they can be tested for, right? SIBO, and what was the
Yes.
other one? Yeah. So
There's
I
SIBO,
think,
there's SIFO, there's dysbiosis, there's
yeah,
histamine intolerance. Yeah,
yeah,
all of those can definitely be tested.
yeah. So I think then, if you're yeah, so then the point is to test for these things. If you don't have those, then there's absolutely no problem with prebiotics
There
and
shouldn't be.
probiotics. um I guess the next one is relevant for anybody, is to reduce dietary fats and sugars. So these things also weigh heavy into the gut. In general, eating a good nutritious diet, which is, again,
Duh.
doesn't matter where you are. I think that's like the point. And then, this is interesting, and maybe you could talk a little bit about it. The Cleveland Clinic suggests also a low FODMAP diet. So can you
Yes.
talk about FODMAP? What does that mean,
Yeah,
and how does it relate to this topic?
sure. So basically, without getting too technical with the terminology, because it's a lot of big long words, low FODMAP. So FODMAP is like the foods that basically ferment in our gut faster, right? They will create more
Mm-hmm.
gases, and they will actually be heavier or like harder to digest, basically, right? So things like onions and garlic, and actually broccoli, for example, or even cauliflower.
So
um,
all the
so
farty foods,
not
farty
necessarily all
foods.
of them. That's the weird thing. Like cabbage
Yeah.
should be okay, but a lot of people are sensitive to cabbage. But there are definitely foods, yeah, lentils, yeah, definitely, like a lot of the farty foods, but also some surprising ones like mushrooms,
Ah.
avocado, like
Okay.
very, very random ones, like what is it called? Butternut squash, for example,
Mm.
is a high FODMAP. A lot of dairy, of course, the wheat and some grains. So there are foods that basically will ferment in our gut
Mm-hmm.
quickly, and will just wreak havoc, and you're just suffering without even knowing. And what
Yeah.
happens is that when we don't know that we're reacting to those foods, we most often will have a few of those during the day, right? And so it's not even a problem of that one specific one. Maybe you're okay with avocados, but because you had avocados for breakfast, and you had maybe some lentils for lunch, and maybe you had some whatever for dinner, even not farty, mushroom soup for dinner, because it was piled on. So you can imagine it as a bucket, and the bucket is just now overflowing. So it's a bit too much for your
Mm.
system. So what we
Mm-hmm.
do with the low FODMAP diet is that we focus on foods that are low FODMAP, meaning they are lower in that fermentation in the gut, in a way, right? The foods that are low in FODMAP. And we leave out or cut down on the high FODMAP foods. We're basically
Mm-hmm.
giving our system a break until it calms down. So it's usually, you're not, do not do the low FODMAP on your own, please. And with an expert, we usually don't do it for longer than 2 to 6 weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to form other problems now, and not have enough of
Yeah.
a variety of food.
So I think what you're describing, and I think there's a lot of other diets like this that are, I would call them diagnosis diets, or another way to talk about them is an elimination diet. It's a form of
Exactly.
eliminating a certain types of foods from your diet to see how your body responds, or to heal your body in a certain way, and then reintroduce foods in a way that you can say, oh yeah, no, now that I haven't had this for X number of days or weeks, I can feel that when I have this, my body feels a certain way. I think the easiest way is anybody who has consumed any alcohol in their life will know that as soon as you consume alcohol, you have a physical response to that. Sometimes my legs and arms feel super heavy after like the first couple sips that I've had.
Wow.
And that is like the starkest thing, right? Like everybody knows you're drinking alcohol, you feel a response. And if they could just translate that to the rest of their food that they're putting in their mouth, you'd be much ahead of the game in understanding what food does to your body, and which foods are good, which foods are good in moderation, which foods, yeah, for me, I will start actually October 1st is my first day to have a vegetable basket every Saturday, locally organic veggie basket that I pick up at my local farmer's market. And it's 2 to 3 kilos of vegetables, and they're seasonal because it's all local. And this was one of my goals for a long time, was to eat only the vegetables that were grown in northern Switzerland, southern Germany, during the time at which they were growing. Because I can tell you, I have red peppers every week around. Red peppers should not be consumed every week year round because they're not. It's not part of the nature, right? And so I think so. I'm really, really, really interested to now change my diet seasonally by eating the vegetables that are in season. And this, if you just did that, that would help a lot with some food insensitivities, because as you were just mentioning, Donna, eating green beans all the time sounds great, but if you don't give your body a rest, it will then start to produce that as a like a wait, no, stop, we're getting a little overloaded with this particular type of
Yeah.
food. And this way you
Yeah.
can
When there is
enjoy
leaky gut.
everything. Yeah, well, you can
Yeah,
enjoy
that's the thing.
everything if you just take it in moderation and not all the time. And moderation, I mean like once a month, once every quarter. I mean, like some of these things you shouldn't have very often. Yeah.
No, I mean, people are living off of avocados nowadays, winter, summer, fall, spring. Those are things, yeah, exactly. I mean, and I think you get to enjoy those foods more when you know they're limited time offer.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you can actually enjoy them. You can enjoy your potatoes. Don't eat them year round. Eat them, during the winter. You won't have much in that basket. You'll have cabbage. You'll have maybe some cauliflower and some, kohlrabi or whatever. But you'll
It's
have plenty
root
of potatoes.
vegetable season. I will be
It's
eating
root
tons of
vegetable
root
season.
vegetables. Yeah.
For a reason, for a reason. But yeah, I mean, this is something again that I want to mention. Yes, you mentioned elimination diets. Again, elimination diets, each one of them, the official ones, okay, are made for you to work on with an expert. I
Hmm.
never advise anyone to do a specific elimination diet, unless we're working with a functional medicine doctor who led them towards that, or if we have enough evidence and then they choose which one works for them. Like there's a lot to say about it. And what's important about elimination diet, even more than the elimination itself, is actually the reintroduction.
Hmm.
Right? So you don't want to just say, okay, great, I eliminated gluten and I eliminated dairy and I eliminated yeast and I eliminated tomatoes, and tomorrow I'm done with my elimination diet and I'm going to have a pizza. Right?
Yeah.
Because now you are reacting for shizzle and you don't even know which one is you're reacting to. Right? So
Yeah.
you need to make sure that you're also reintroducing in a smart and methodical way in
Hmm.
order for yourself to understand what's going on, and understand that some foods, for intolerances, not allergies, intolerances and sensitivities, you might react to up to 3 days later.
Yeah.
Okay. And the reaction might be an eczema or a migraine. It doesn't have to be directly gut related for you as a reaction. So,
Yeah.
really important
Yeah.
to keep that in mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Oh, well, cool. I think I think we've covered as much as we probably can cover in a topic like this. But yeah, I mean, really insightful. As you can tell, we are both extremely passionate about these topics. And as I'm sure you can tell, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, a lot of stuff is fucking connected. It's connected, people. The stress, lack of sleep, your diet, your mental state. I mean, they're so, and I think if anything we could just continue to drive home is that everything is connected. So don't discount anything. If you feel something, then there's probably something to it. So don't just ignore your body. This is the worst thing you can do for your health, is to ignore how you feel when you're, in general. So, Danna, any words of wisdom, any closing thoughts?
No, I think that, I'm actually doing a fermented food webinar soon in a couple of weeks where I do talk about leaky gut, but I also talk about, the fermented foods. So you were talking about probiotics, and that's one way to really get great probiotics in your body, enjoy incredible flavors. We've interviewed our favorite kombucha lady, Gina, from the Swiss Kombucha Company. Shout out to Gina. Hey, Gina. And, those are just some of the things that you can actually enjoy and eat and notice how you're reacting without having to spend $50 or $100 on a pill box, and then realize that you can't take it because it's giving you a certain reaction. So there are definitely many, many ways. I think this topic we could probably talk about for a million more hours, but hopefully you gained a lot of, good knowledge. And if you have any questions, just don't forget to leave those in the comment section, either on our Facebook Live or on our podcast.
Yeah, excellent. So with that, I think we're done. Yay! First live episode in the bank.
No, we kind of killed it too.
Yeah, we did. Oh! Excellent. All right, everybody. See you later. Bye-bye.
Peace out. Bye.